The Bifrost splintered. Not shattered, splintered. The Rainbow Bridge, eternal pathway between realms, cracked down its center as reality itself buckled under the weight of two mythologies colliding. Heimdall, all-seeing guardian of Asgard, stumbled backward from his observatory post, golden eyes wide with something he hadn't experienced in millennia. Shock. Through the kaleidoscope of dimensional energy tearing through the cosmic gateway, a single figure stepped onto Asgardian soil. Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, stood beneath alien stars with frost coating his gray skin and the Leviathan axe gripped in one scarred hand. The blades of chaos hung at his sides, their chains rattling with each breath. His eyes, cold, yellow, merciless, scanned the golden realm before him. This wasn't Midgard. This wasn't Jotunheim or any of the 9 realms he knew. The architecture gleamed too brightly. The magic felt different. And yet the scent of divine arrogance hung thick in the air. He'd torn through dimensional barriers before, killed gods across pantheons. This place, wherever it was, housed gods. And where there were gods, there was power. Power he needed. Power that would ensure his son never faced another Baldur, another Zeus, another divine threat that could rip away everything Kratos had fought to protect. Who dares trespass upon Asgard? Heimdall's voice boomed across the bridge, his hand moving to his sword. Kratos' response was silence. He'd learned long ago that gods who announced themselves did so out of pride. He simply walked forward, boots echoing on gold, leaving footprints of melting frost with each step. The rift behind him sealed with a thunderous crack, trapping him in this new realm. Good. That meant whatever power existed here couldn't escape either. In the throne room of Asgard's palace, alarms that hadn't sounded since the frost giant's last incursion centuries ago began to wail. Odin rose from his seat, single eye narrowing. Beside him, Thor, younger, more reckless than he would become, grabbed Mjolnir with the eager grin of someone who'd been bored for far too long. "Father, I'll handle this intruder," Thor declared, lightning already crackling around his armor. But Odin's expression remained grave. "That is no mere intruder, my son. I sense death. Death of gods." On Earth, in a world still reeling from the revelation that aliens and gods walked among them, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s monitoring stations exploded with activity. Energy signatures off the charts. Dimensional breach detected. And something else, something that read simultaneously as divine and catastrophically dangerous. Nick Fury stared at the readings, eye patch concealing whatever emotion flickered across his face. Get me Stark. Get me Rogers. And somebody find out what the hell just set off every cosmic alarm we've got. In his Manhattan tower, Tony Stark was 3 drinks into ignoring his responsibilities when Jarvis interrupted. "Sir, S.H.I.E.L.D. is reporting a level 9 dimensional event. Energy readings suggest..." "Let me guess," Tony said, already moving toward his armor. "Another god decided to visit?" "Not precisely, sir. This signature doesn't match any known Asgardian profile. S.H.I.E.L.D. is classifying it as potentially hostile." Tony's arc reactor hummed as the Mark 7 armor began assembling around him. "Potentially hostile? That's just every Tuesday now, isn't it?" In Brooklyn, Steve Rogers was halfway through his morning run when his phone buzzed with the emergency frequency. He didn't break stride, already calculating response time to the nearest Quinjet. The Avengers had faced aliens. They'd faced a god of mischief. But something about this alert felt different, heavier. Back on the Bifrost, Kratos reached the end of the bridge where it connected to Asgard proper. Heimdall stood in his path, sword drawn, the Guardian's omniscient gaze trying to pierce through the layers of rage and determination that armored the Spartan's soul. "I see you, Godslayer," Heimdall said quietly. "I see the blood of Olympus on your hands. I see the ashes of your homeland. I see..." "Then you see that I will not stop." Kratos' voice was gravel and fury, each word carrying the weight of 100 divine corpses. "Where is the god of thunder?" Heimdall's expression shifted from curiosity to grim understanding. "Thor Odinson, you seek to challenge him? I seek his power." Kratos raised the Leviathan axe, frost spreading from its blade. "I will take it. He can surrender it, or I will cut it from his corpse." His choice. The sky above Asgard darkened. Storm clouds gathered with unnatural speed, and through them, lightning carved a path. Thor descended like judgment itself, Mjolnir spinning, red cape billowing, every inch the arrogant god prince who'd once started wars for sport. "I am Thor, son of Odin," his voice carried across the realm. "And you dare threaten to take my power?" Kratos simply stared at this new god, cataloging weaknesses, measuring threat levels. Similar height, similar build, weapon-dependent, overconfident, another Baldur, another Hercules, another god who thought himself untouchable. "I have killed gods more powerful than you, boy." Kratos shifted his stance, decades of combat experience flowing into muscle memory. "Walk away, or become another name I forget." Thor's grin widened, lightning dancing between his fingers. "I like your confidence, stranger. But confidence won't save you from the god of thunder. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. With great power comes great responsibility. The Leviathan axe met Mjolnir with a crack that could be heard across dimensions. Frost and lightning exploded outward, the shockwave shattering windows in Asgard's palace, and sending Heimdall sliding backward despite his legendary strength. The battle had begun, and in the space between heartbeats, as two gods tested each other's power, Kratos felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving Greece. Recognition. This Thor, this thunder god, possessed strength worthy of consideration, which meant taking his power would actually mean something. The ghost of Sparta allowed himself the smallest satisfaction. Finally, a god who might survive long enough to prove a challenge. Then he pressed forward, and the real fight began. Thor swung Mjolnir in a devastating arc, expecting the gray-skinned warrior to dodge or block. Instead, Kratos caught the hammer's shaft with his bare hand mid-swing, stopping its momentum through pure strength. For a heartbeat, Thor's expression shifted from confident to confused. No one simply stopped Mjolnir. Not mortal, not monster, not... Kratos drove his forehead into Thor's face. The headbutt sent the Asgardian stumbling backward, blood streaming from his nose. Real blood, real pain. Thor's shock gave way to something between respect and rage as he ripped Mjolnir free and brought lightning crashing down. The bolt struck Kratos directly, electricity coursing through the god-killer's body. His muscles seized, his jaw clenched, but he didn't fall. "Impressive," Kratos growled, frost forming on his skin as his body adapted to the assault. "But I've endured Zeus's lightning. Yours is weaker." The comparison ignited something primal in Thor. He roared, summoning the full fury of the storm. Lightning didn't just strike. It became a continuous pillar of destruction, hammering Kratos into the Bifrost's golden surface. The bridge cracked beneath them. The rainbow light within flickered, but Kratos planted his feet, reached through the lightning with his right hand, and hurled the Leviathan axe. The frost-enchanted weapon spun through the electrical maelstrom, its magic disrupting Thor's storm. It struck the god of thunder in the chest, ice spreading across his armor, and sent him crashing through a crystalline tower. Kratos extended his hand. The axe returned to his grip like it had never left, leaving a trail of frozen air. He advanced toward the rubble, methodical, patient. He'd fought gods who controlled storms before. They all fell the same way. Separate them from their element, weather their strongest attacks, then close the distance and break them. Thor burst from the debris, armor scorched and cracked, but grinning wider than before. You're strong, I'll grant you that. But you mistake Asgardian durability for weakness. He spun Mjolnir, rising into the air. I am the god of thunder, and I do not yield. Then you will die, Kratos stated simply. No malice, no pleasure, just fact. They collided again, Leviathan axe against Mjolnir, each impact sending shockwaves across Asgard. Buildings shook, citizens fled, and in the palace, Odin descended from his throne with grim purpose, Gungnir, the spear of heaven, in hand. Enough. The All-Father's voice carried divine authority that made reality itself pause. Both combatants separated, breathing hard, weapons ready. Odin's single eye assessed Kratos with the weight of eons. Who are you, and why do you assault my son? Kratos' yellow eyes fixed on Odin without fear. He'd stared down Zeus. He'd defied the Sisters of Fate. Another king of gods meant nothing. I am Kratos. I seek power to protect what matters. Your son possesses that power. So you would kill him for it? Odin's grip on Gungnir tightened. If necessary. Kratos' honesty was brutal, uncompromising. I have walked this path before, All-Father. I have toppled Olympus, slaughtered the Greek pantheon. If Asgard stands between me and my goal, Asgard will fall. Thor laughed, blood on his teeth, electricity dancing across his skin. Bold words, but you've never faced. Silence, Thor. Odin's command stopped his son mid-boast. The All-Father studied Kratos with uncomfortable recognition. You speak of Olympus, the Greek gods. They no longer exist in their realm? They exist as corpses and memories. No remorse in Kratos' voice. Zeus lies dead by my hand. Ares, Athena, Poseidon, Hades, all of them. I am what remains of that pantheon. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Even Thor's bravado faltered. The idea of an entire divine family destroyed by a single warrior contradicted everything Asgard stood for. Gods were eternal. Gods were supreme. Yet here stood living proof that gods could be ended. Odin's expression darkened with something Kratos recognized. Calculation. The All-Father was measuring threat versus opportunity, wondering if this god-killer could be ally, prisoner, or if execution was the only option. Kratos had seen that look before, in Zeus's eyes, in the faces of every god who thought they could control him. You cannot have my son's power, Odin declared. But neither can I allow a threat of your magnitude to wander freely. I offer you two choices. Depart this realm through the Bifrost, or... Father, no. Thor stepped forward, Mjolnir raised. This warrior seeks battle. Give him battle. Let me prove Asgard's might. Thor. He killed an entire pantheon. Thor's eyes blazed with the fervor of someone who'd never truly been tested. If he can be defeated, shouldn't it be by Asgardian strength? If he cannot, then you're right to fear him. But I won't know unless we finish this. Kratos watched the exchange with familiar contempt. Gods and their pride, their need to prove superiority, it made them predictable. Your son speaks sense, All-Father. One way or another, this ends today. Odin looked between the two warriors, seeing Thor's determination and Kratos' cold certainty. Finally, the ancient god nodded. Very well, but not here. Not where Asgard's innocence can be harmed. He raised Gungnir, and reality bent. You will fight in the arena, under my observation. And when it is done, Kratos of Olympus, you will accept my judgment. When it is done, Kratos replied, your son will be dead or broken. Your judgment will be irrelevant. The world shifted. Golden light enveloped them, and when it cleared, they stood in a vast circular arena carved from mountain stone. Runes of containment glowed along the walls, ancient magic designed to prevent exactly this kind of combat from spilling into populated areas. Above, the sky churned with Thor's gathering storm. Odin's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Begin. Thor didn't wait. He launched himself forward with Mjolnir leading, lightning trailing behind like a comet's tail. Kratos rolled aside, the hammer's impact cratering stone where he'd stood. The blades of chaos came free from their bindings with the hiss of eternal flame. Kratos spun them in practiced arcs, and when Thor charged again, the chains wrapped around Mjolnir's shaft. For the first time, doubt flickered in Thor's eyes as Kratos yanked, using the god of thunder's own momentum against him. Thor stumbled forward into a devastating punch that would have caved in a mortal's skull. The Asgardian's head snapped back, but he twisted with the blow, bringing Mjolnir around in a vicious counter that caught Kratos in the ribs. Bones cracked. Pain flared. Kratos was launched across the arena, bouncing twice before sliding to a stop. He rose slowly, touching his side where armor had shattered. Real damage. Good. Thor had power worth taking. You feel that? Thor called out, breathing hard. That's Asgardian strength. That's what you came seeking. Kratos' response was to activate Spartan Rage. Red energy exploded from Kratos' body, raw fury made manifest. His muscles swelled, scars glowing like brands, and when he roared, it carried the accumulated rage of every betrayal, every loss, every god who'd ever looked down on him. The arena's containment runes flared, struggling to hold the sheer force of his wrath. Thor barely raised Mjolnir in time. Kratos' fist collided with the hammer, and the impact created a shockwave that cracked the arena floor in a perfect circle radiating outward. Thor was driven backward, feet carving trenches in solid stone, arms shaking from the force. He'd never felt strength like this. Not from frost giants, not from dark elves. This was something primal, older than magic, forged from pure, unbridled fury. Kratos pressed forward, abandoning technique for overwhelming aggression. The blades of chaos became whirlwinds of fire, each strike forcing Thor to parry desperately with Mjolnir. The god of thunder tried to create distance, tried to use his flight advantage. But Kratos anticipated every movement with the instinct of someone who'd fought aerial opponents for centuries. When Thor took to the air, Kratos hurled the Leviathan axe with perfect accuracy, freezing one of Thor's arms solid and sending him crashing down. The Asgardian hit the ground hard, rolled, came up swinging. Mjolnir caught Kratos across the jaw, lightning detonating on impact. The god-killer's head rocked sideways, blood spraying, but he turned back with eyes that held no pain, only calculation. He'd taken worse from Hercules, survived worse from the Furies. This Thor, for all his power, fought like someone who'd never truly faced death. Kratos had lived with death for so long, they were intimate companions. Is this all? Kratos' voice was distorted by Spartan rage, deeper, more bestial. Is this the might of Asgard's champion? Thor's pride ignited. He summoned lightning not just from the sky, but from within, his entire body becoming a living storm. When he swung Mjolnir, it left after images of pure electricity. When his fists flew, they trailed thunder. He became what legend spoke of, the god of thunder in his full, terrible glory. The arena exploded into chaos. Fire met lightning, ice met thunder. Kratos' chains wrapped around Thor's legs, yanking the god down, but Thor used the momentum to spin and deliver a hammer blow that shattered Kratos' shoulder guard. Kratos responded by driving his knee into Thor's chest with enough force to send the Asgardian through the arena wall, containment runes shrieking as they adapted to the expanding battle. On Earth, the Avengers' Quinjet was in full flight. Tony's armor gleamed in the cockpit lights while Steve gripped his shield, his enhanced senses picking up on the tension radiating from every team member. Natasha Romanoff piloted with practiced calm, but her eyes kept flicking to the energy readings that climbed higher every second. "So, let me get this straight," Tony said, checking weapon systems. "Some kind of god is fighting Thor on Asgard, and we're supposed to... what? Break it up? Ground them both?" "Shield's readings suggest this combatant is strong enough to threaten Thor," Steve replied, his tactical mind already working through scenarios. "If Thor falls, and this fighter comes to Earth, then we've got a god killer on our hands," Natasha finished. "Fury wants containment protocols ready." Bruce Banner, hunched in the back of the jet, spoke quietly. "I've been studying the energy signature. It's not like anything in our database. Not Asgardian, not Kree, not any known alien species. It reads as divine, but wrong. Like it's absorbed power from multiple sources." "Translation?" Tony asked. "Translation. Whoever this is, they've killed gods before. The energy signature practically screams it." Bruce's hands trembled slightly. "And if they're fighting Thor to take his power, they're not going to stop with just him." In the arena, Thor lay gasping, armor shattered, bleeding from a dozen wounds, but his eyes still burned with defiance. He'd grown up hearing stories of Asgard's invincibility, of how no force in the 9 realms could challenge Odin's might. Now here was someone who destroyed an entire pantheon, and Thor realized with sickening clarity that he might actually lose. "Yield," Kratos commanded, standing over him. The Spartan rage had subsided, leaving him breathing hard, but still dangerous, still ready. "I have no desire to kill you, boy, but I will." "Then, do it." Thor spat blood, raising Mjolnir with shaking arms. An Asgardian doesn't surrender, not while breath remains. For the first time, something like respect flickered in Kratos' eyes. Brave. Foolish, but brave. He raised the Leviathan axe for a killing blow. "Your death will be..." "Stop!" The command didn't come from Odin. It came from a voice Kratos knew too well. One that made his blood run cold with protective fury. Through a secondary rift, one that glowed with different magic entirely, a young boy stumbled into the arena. Atreus, his son. "Father, no." The boy ran forward, interposing himself between Kratos and Thor. "You can't. This isn't like before. These aren't the Greek gods. Please." Kratos' axe lowered instantly. Every ounce of rage drained away, replaced by pure parental panic. "Boy, how did you..." The rift should have sealed. "I followed you." Atreus' eyes were desperate, pleading. "I heard what you said about taking power to protect me, but I don't need that. I need you. Not the ghost of Sparta, not the god killer. I need my father." The arena fell silent. Even Thor, through his pain, recognized the shift in Kratos' demeanor. The unstoppable warrior who'd nearly killed him transformed into something else entirely. a father terrified for his child's safety. Odin's voice echoed again, but gentler now. The boy speaks wisdom beyond his years. Kratos knelt beside Atreus, checking him for injuries, his hands shaking slightly. You should not have come. This place, these gods, they are dangerous. So were the Norse gods, Atreus countered. And we survived. Together. We don't need more power, Father. We just need to be smart, to be better than what came before. Thor struggled to his feet, using Mjolnir as support. He looked at Kratos differently now, seeing not just a warrior, but a father driven by fear and love. Your son is braver than both of us, he said quietly. He crossed realms to save you from yourself. Kratos' jaw tightened. Everything in him screamed to complete the mission, to take Thor's power and ensure no god could ever threaten Atreus again. But looking at his son's face, seeing the fear and hope warring there, he remembered other faces. Calliope, Lysandra, his first family, destroyed because he'd chosen power over wisdom. Boy, Kratos said heavily, I was trying to protect you. I know, Atreus replied. But this isn't protection. This is revenge. This is the path that destroyed everything in Greece. Please, Father, we can find another way. The god-killer stood slowly, every muscle in his body screaming protest against abandoning the fight. But Atreus was right. He'd torn through Olympus seeking power to prevent loss, and it had cost him everything. Now here he stood, ready to repeat the same mistake in a different realm. I yield, Kratos said, the words tasting like ash. He looked at Thor. Not to you, boy. To him. He gestured to Atreus. My son possesses wisdom I've forgotten. The Avengers arrived 90 seconds too late. Their Quinjet descended toward Asgard's gleaming spires just as Heimdall reopened the Bifrost, ready to transport them to the arena at Odin's command. Tony's sensors went haywire trying to process the dimensional architecture. Steve was already halfway to the ramp, shield in hand, prepared for whatever apocalyptic battle awaited them. What they found instead was anticlimactic and deeply unsettling. Two gods stood in a ruined arena, neither attacking. One was Thor, bloodied, armor shattered, barely standing. The other was a gray-skinned warrior they'd never seen before, covered in scars and tattoos, with a young boy clutching his arm. The warrior held weapons that seemed to pulse with elemental power, but they hung loosely at his sides. No active combat, no world-ending destruction in progress. Just two fighters who'd reached some kind of understanding. Well, this is disappointing, Tony muttered over comms. I flew all the way to Asgard for a fight and they're already done. Where's the threat? But Steve's tactical instincts were screaming. He took in the crater-filled arena, the shattered containment runes, the way Thor stood like someone who'd nearly died. What happened here? Odin materialized before them, Gungnir glowing with quiet power. The All-Father looked older than his appearance suggested, burdened by knowledge and decisions. Avengers of Midgard, your arrival is timely, if unnecessary. The immediate crisis has passed. With respect, sir, Natasha said, her hand never far from her weapon. Shield detected energy readings consistent with a planetary-level threat. That man, she gestured to Kratos. Who is he? I am Kratos. The warrior's voice carried no inflection, no attempt to soften or explain, just statement of fact. I came seeking the god of thunder's power. I intended to take it by force. I have chosen not to. Steve's grip on his shield tightened. You intended to kill Thor? To steal his abilities? Yes. The blunt admission sent tension rippling through the Avengers. Bruce shifted uncomfortably, clearly fighting to keep calm. Tony's repulsors powered up with a whine. But before anyone could act, Atreus stepped forward, his young voice carrying surprising authority. "My father made a mistake," the boy said. "He thought he needed more power to protect me. But he's learning that strength isn't just about how many gods you can kill. It's about knowing when not to fight." "Your father?" Steve repeated slowly, processing the implications. "And how many gods has your father killed?" "Enough." Kratos' yellow eyes met Steve's without flinching. "I ended the Greek pantheon. Zeus, Ares, all of them. I am what remains of Olympus." The silence that followed was deafening. Tony's helmet sensors went into overdrive, scanning Kratos for threat assessment. The numbers that came back made no sense. Power readings off the charts, but not technologically based, not alien. Something older, more fundamental. "You're the reason the Greek gods disappeared," Bruce said quietly, his voice carrying horrified understanding. "The ancient temples, the sudden silence from that pantheon, that was you." "They gave me no choice," Kratos replied. And for the first time, something that might have been regret flickered across his features. "But I will not make those mistakes here. My son has reminded me that there are paths besides destruction." Thor limped forward, one arm still frozen from the Leviathan axe's magic. Despite his injuries, he addressed the Avengers with authority. "This warrior nearly killed me. In fair combat with no deception, no tricks, just raw power against raw power. He is perhaps the most dangerous being I've ever faced." He paused, meeting Kratos' gaze. But he stopped. When his son asked him to choose differently, he stopped. That speaks to honor, even if his methods were aggressive. "Aggressive?" Tony's voice dripped with sarcasm. "He came here to murder you and take your powers. That's not aggressive, that's psychotic." "No," Steve said, studying Kratos with the eyes of someone who'd seen good people do terrible things for understandable reasons. "That's desperate. That's a father who's lost before and won't lose again." He lowered his shield slightly. "I understand that feeling." Kratos' eyes narrowed, reassessing this helmeted mortal who spoke with unexpected wisdom. "You know loss, soldier? I know what it's like to wake up in a world where everyone you loved is gone," Steve replied quietly. "I know what it's like to feel powerless while people suffer. But I've also learned that real strength comes from the people beside you, not the power you take from others." Pretty words. Kratos' tone suggested he'd heard similar speeches from gods before killing them. But words don't stop divine threats. Neither does becoming a divine threat yourself, Natasha interjected. "You ended the Greek pantheon? Congratulations. You created a power vacuum that probably caused untold suffering for anyone who relied on those gods. Followers, innocents, entire civilizations built around their existence." The accusation hit Kratos harder than any blow Thor had landed. Because she was right. He'd never considered the mortals caught in Olympus's collapse, too consumed by rage to think beyond his immediate revenge. Just like he hadn't considered the consequences of attacking Thor until Atreus forced him to see. "I cannot undo what I've done," Kratos admitted, "but I can choose not to repeat it." Odin struck Gungnir against the arena floor, the sound echoing with finality. "Which brings us to the matter of judgment. Kratos of Olympus, you have assaulted my son, threatened Asgard, and admitted to deicide on a grand scale. By rights, I should imprison or execute you." Atreus' grip on his father's arm tightened, but Kratos remained still, accepting whatever verdict came. "However," Odin continued, his single eye glinting with something calculating, "you also possess knowledge we lack. You've killed gods. You've survived the fall of an entire pantheon, and you stopped when given reason to reconsider. These qualities suggest possibilities beyond punishment." "What are you proposing?" Steve asked, sensing where this was headed. "An accord." Odin gestured to encompass Kratos, Thor, and the Avengers. Kratos seeks to protect his son from divine threats. Thor seeks to protect the 9 realms. You Avengers seek to protect Midgard. Our goals align more than they conflict. "You want us to work with him?" Tony's disbelief was palpable. The guy who just admitted to god genocide? "I want," Odin said carefully, "to ensure that if threats arise which require extreme measures, we have someone who has already proven capable of ending gods. The universe is vast, Avengers. Not all gods are benevolent. Not all divine beings deserve existence. Kratos has walked that dark path. Perhaps his experience could serve us all." Thor wiped blood from his face, considering. "He's right. I've fought Kratos. His power is staggering. And more than that, he fights like someone who's faced impossible odds and won anyway. If something emerges that threatens Asgard, threatens Earth, something that normal heroes cannot stop, wouldn't you want that weapon in your arsenal?" "He's not a weapon," Atreus said fiercely. "He's my father." "He's both," Steve said quietly. And something in his tone made Kratos look at him with new respect. The soldier understood. The question is whether he can be one, without becoming only the other. Kratos studied each of them. The soldier with the shield, the genius in armor, the woman who watched him like prey, the nervous man who smelled like barely controlled power. Earth's defenders. So different from Olympus's gods, who'd never truly protected anything but their own dominance. "I will not serve you," Kratos said finally. "I serve no pantheon, answer to no king. But if your realm faces threats that require my expertise, I will listen. For my son's sake. Because he deserves a world where gods can be questioned, where power doesn't mean tyranny." "That's the best offer you're getting," Natasha muttered to Steve. Steve nodded slowly. "All right. But if you go after Thor again, if you go after any god without justification, the Avengers will stop you. Are we clear?" "You can try," Kratos replied. No malice in his words, just fact. Thor laughed, then winced from cracked ribs. "I like him. He's honest about his murderous intentions. Very refreshing compared to Loki's schemes." "Speaking of Loki," Odin said, his expression darkening, "my other son has been suspiciously absent during these events. Heimdall, report." The Guardian appeared, his golden armor scorched from containing the rift energies. "All-Father, I detected Loki's magic signature in the dimensional breach. It appears he may have encouraged the rift's expansion." 3 days passed in uneasy peace. Kratos and Atreus occupied guest quarters in Asgard's palace. Lavish by any standard, prison-like by Kratos' assessment. Golden walls, enchanted tapestries depicting heroic battles, furniture crafted by master artisans. Atreus marveled at everything. Kratos cataloged exits, weak points in the architecture, and the positions of guards he could hear patrolling beyond their doors. "They don't trust us," Kratos observed, sharpening the Leviathan axe with methodical precision. "Can you blame them?" Atreus sat cross-legged on an ornate bed, studying a book on Asgardian history that Odin's scholars had provided. "You did try to kill Thor, And you told them you destroyed Olympus. That's not exactly make friends material, Father. I don't need friends. I need... Kratos stopped himself, the old patterns of thought catching on new awareness. What did he need? Power? He had power. Control? Control was an illusion. Safety? No amount of divine strength had ever truly kept his family safe. You need to figure out what comes next, Atreus finished gently. We can't go home yet. The rift sealed behind us. So while we're here, maybe we could learn. These gods are different from ours. They actually seem to care about mortals. A knock interrupted before Kratos could respond. The door opened to reveal Thor, mostly healed but still bearing faint bruises, and beside him, Steve Rogers in civilian clothes, shield conspicuously absent. May we enter? Steve asked, his tone carefully neutral. Kratos gestured curtly. Thor strode in with the confidence of someone in his own domain, but Steve moved with tactical awareness, noting the same exits and positions that Kratos had mapped. The two warriors recognized each other immediately, soldiers who'd survived too much to ever truly relax. My father sent me to check on our guests, Thor said, though his eyes suggested a more personal interest. And Captain Rogers wished to speak with you. Something about warrior to warrior, though I don't see why mortals and gods need separate conversations. Because, Steve said mildly, sometimes understanding comes better without the weight of divinity complicating things. He looked at Kratos. I wanted to talk about your code, your way of fighting. I have no code, Kratos replied. I have survival. I have victory. Nothing else matters. That's not true. Steve pulled up a chair, sitting at eye level rather than standing over them. You stopped when Atreus asked you to. That's a code. You're following rules you set for yourself, even if you won't call them that. Thor watched the exchange with curiosity, recognizing something he'd never quite grasped about mortal warriors. They carried weight differently than gods, not immortality's burden, but the knowledge that every choice, every battle, might be their last. The soldier speaks wisdom, Kratos admitted grudgingly. I stopped because my son is what remains good in me. Without him, I am only the ghost of Sparta, death incarnate. And that's your code, Steve pressed. Protect your son. Choose his future over your past. That's more than a lot of warriors can say. He leaned forward. I've read what S.H.I.E.L.D. could find about Greek mythology. If even half the stories are true, you had every reason to hate the gods. Zeus, Ares, they used you, betrayed you, destroyed everything you loved, so you fought back the only way you knew how. I slaughtered them, Kratos corrected. Don't romanticize it, soldier. I tore Olympus down with my bare hands. I showed no mercy, asked for none. The gods deserved death, and I delivered it. Did all of them deserve it? The question came from Atreus, quiet but pointed. What about Hephaestus? He tried to help you. Or Aphrodite? She never did anything to you directly. Kratos' jaw tightened. The memories were ash and blood, fury that consumed everything in its path. Had he killed innocents among the guilty? Yes. Had he cared in those moments? No. And that was the truth he couldn't escape. In his rage, he'd become exactly what he'd sworn to destroy. No, he finally admitted. Not all of them deserved death. But I was too consumed by vengeance to distinguish between guilty and innocent. That is my burden. That is why I cannot allow myself to walk that path again. Thor's expression shifted from curiosity to something approaching respect. You take responsibility for your actions. Many gods refuse even that much. They blame fate, blame circumstance, blame anyone but themselves. Because gods are cowards, Kratos said flatly. They hide behind power and immortality, never truly tested. You, Thor Odinson, are beginning to understand this. I felt it in our fight. You've started questioning what it means to be worthy of power. Thor stiffened, struck by the accuracy. Since fighting Kratos, he'd replayed every moment, every decision, every arrogant assumption that had nearly gotten him killed. The ghost of Sparta had shown him something terrifying, that being a god meant nothing against someone who'd already killed gods and learned from it. That's why I'm here, Thor admitted. I want to learn how you fight, not the techniques. I saw those clearly enough. But the mindset. You fight like death itself, like nothing can stop you because you've already lost everything that mattered. How do you carry that and still function? You don't, Kratos said simply. You endure. You breathe. You find one thing worth protecting and you build everything around that. For me, it's him. He gestured to Atreus. Without my son, I would still be rampaging through realms, killing anything divine that crossed my path. He gave me purpose beyond destruction. Steve nodded slowly. That's what the Avengers are for most of us. Tony fights to prove he's more than his weapons. Natasha fights to erase red in her ledger. Bruce fights to prove the monster doesn't define him. We all need something beyond the mission, or the mission becomes all we are. And what do you fight for, soldier? Kratos asked with genuine curiosity. I fight so that the people I couldn't save, the ones I left behind when I went into the ice, didn't sacrifice for nothing. I fight to make sure their world, their hopes, their dreams continue. Even if I don't belong in this time anymore. The admission hung in the air, raw and honest. Thor looked uncomfortable, unused to vulnerability displayed so openly. But Kratos understood immediately. Here was another warrior shaped by loss. Another man living beyond his proper time, carrying the weight of a world that had moved on without him. Then we are similar, Captain Rogers, Kratos said. Both haunted by pasts that cannot be changed, both trying to forge something better from the ashes. Which brings me to why I really came here, Steve said, his tone shifting to tactical. S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers have been investigating the rift that brought you here. It wasn't natural. Someone engineered it, someone with both technological and magical expertise. And the energy signature matches Asgardian magic. Thor's face darkened. Loki. Heimdall said my brother's magic was involved, but Father hasn't been able to locate him. He's using every trick he knows to stay hidden. Why would this Loki bring us here? Atreus asked. What does he gain? Chaos, Thor sighed. Loki gains from chaos, always has. You, he gestured to Kratos, are the perfect instrument of chaos. A god-killer loose in Asgard? The mere existence of you undermines everything my realm stands for. It creates fear, uncertainty, questions about whether gods are truly supreme. Loki loves nothing more than watching authority crumble. Kratos stood, pacing like a caged predator. Then he's a fool. Using me as a pawn only works if I don't know I'm being used. Now that I do, I become a weapon pointed at him instead. That's assuming we can find him, Steve said. Loki's been evading Asgardian security for centuries. He's practically a ghost. Ghosts can be hunted, Kratos replied. I've killed spirits, wraiths, and phantoms across multiple realms. If this trickster god thinks he can manipulate me without consequences, he'll learn the same lesson Zeus did. I don't forgive schemes, I end them. Father, wait. Atreus moved beside him, placing a hand on Kratos' arm. Remember what we talked about. Not everything needs to end in violence. Maybe we can outsmart Loki instead of just killing him. The boy's right, Thor said, though he looked pained to admit it. Loki responds to cunning more than force. If we simply attack him, he'll slip away and return with worse schemes. But if we turn his plans against him, make him think he's winning when he's actually losing, that's how you truly defeat the god of mischief. Kratos looked at his son, then at Thor and Steve. Everything in his warrior's instinct screamed to solve this problem the way he'd solved every problem since Sparta, with overwhelming violence. But he'd promised to be better, to learn, to let Atreus' wisdom guide him toward solutions that didn't end in bloodshed. "What do you propose?" he asked finally. Steve smiled slightly. "We set a trap. Use what Loki expects against him. He thinks you're a violent weapon waiting to explode. So we let him think he's succeeding in pushing you toward violence. Meanwhile, we track his movements, predict his next play, and catch him when he's vulnerable." "Deception," Kratos said with distaste. "I prefer direct confrontation." "Which is exactly why this will work," Thor interjected. "Loki knows I prefer direct confrontation too. He's used to fighting opponents who charge straight at problems. But you, Captain, you understand strategy. And you," he looked at Kratos, "you understand what it means to be underestimated. Together, we might actually surprise him." Atreus grinned. "This is like the time we tricked the witch in the woods. Remember, Father? We pretended to leave, but actually circled back." "That was your plan," Kratos reminded him. "And it worked because I trusted your judgment over my instincts." "So trust us now," Steve said. "Let's show Loki what happens when a god killer, a thunder god, and a super soldier work together. I have a feeling it's not something he's prepared for." Kratos considered, every tactical bone in his body analyzing the proposal. It went against his nature. It required patience when he preferred action. But it also gave him something he rarely had: allies who understood both warfare and wisdom. And more importantly, it gave Atreus hope that problems could be solved without his father reverting to the monster he'd been. "Very well," Kratos decided. "We hunt the trickster. But when we find him, I want answers. Why bring me here? What is his true goal? And if his plans threaten my son?" He let the implication hang unfinished. "Understood," Steve said. "Now, Thor, you mentioned Loki usually hides in..." A massive explosion rocked the palace. The floor buckled, golden walls cracked, and through the windows they could see smoke rising from Asgard's armory. Alarms blared, warriors rushed to defensive positions, and Heimdall's voice echoed across the realm. "The armory is breached. The casket of ancient winters has been taken." Thor's face went pale. "No, that weapon could freeze entire planets. If it falls into the wrong hands, then we get it back," Kratos said, already moving toward the door with weapons in hand. "Where would your brother take something that dangerous?" "That's just it," Thor replied, summoning Mjolnir as lightning crackled around him. Loki wouldn't steal it himself. He'd manipulate someone else into doing it, someone expendable, someone he could sacrifice when... He stopped mid-sentence, realization dawning with horrible clarity. His eyes found Kratos, and the ghost of Sparta understood immediately. They'd been played. The conversations, the building trust, the careful alliance forming, all of it designed to put them in exactly this position. "He wanted us working together," Steve said grimly, his tactical mind catching up. He wanted you and Thor allied because when something goes wrong, we'll be blamed together. Kratos finished. The God Killer and the Thunder God, both present when Asgard's greatest weapon was stolen. Both obvious suspects. Both convenient scapegoats. Atreus looked stricken. So, everything we just talked about, all of it was exactly what Loki wanted us to talk about. Thor snarled. He's been listening, watching, and now he's sprung his real trap. As if summoning him with their accusations, Loki appeared in the doorway, his smile serpentine and satisfied. But something was wrong. His usual swagger seemed forced. His eyes held something that might have been genuine fear. And when he spoke, his voice carried an edge of desperation. Hello, brother. Hello, ghost of Sparta. I believe we need to talk, because the casket wasn't stolen by my design. And whoever actually took it is far, far worse than any scheme I could devise. Thor had Mjolnir at Loki's throat before the trickster could blink. Lightning danced across the hammer's surface, reflecting in Loki's eyes with lethal promise. Give me one reason I shouldn't end your schemes permanently, brother. Because I'm telling the truth for once, Loki replied, remarkably calm for someone seconds from death. And because you're all intelligent enough to recognize when something is genuinely wrong. Kratos moved beside Thor, the Leviathan axe humming with frost magic. You opened the rift. You brought me here. Everything that's happened traces back to your manipulation, trickster. Why should we believe anything you say? Because, Loki said, meeting Kratos' yellow eyes without flinching, I may have brought you here, but I didn't plan for you to nearly kill my brother. I didn't plan for you to show restraint. And I certainly didn't plan for someone else to exploit the chaos I created and steal one of Asgard's most dangerous weapons. Steve's hand went to his shield, though he'd left it in the Avengers' quarters. His body still moved with trained instinct. You're saying someone outsmarted you? Forgive me if I find that convenient. Convenient? Loki laughed bitterly. Captain, I've spent centuries building a reputation as the god of mischief. If word spreads that someone beat me at my own game, that reputation crumbles. No, this isn't convenience. This is humiliation. And I want whoever did this punished almost as much as you want the casket recovered. Odin materialized in a flash of golden light, Gungnir blazing with power, flanked by Asgardian warriors in full battle armor. The All-Father's single eye swept across the scene. His sons, the God Killer, the Avenger, all clustered in a room while his realm burned. His expression was thunderous. Loki, explain yourself. Now. The trickster god straightened, despite Thor's hammer still hovering inches from his windpipe. Father, I opened a dimensional rift to bring Kratos here. My intent was admittedly chaotic. I wanted to see what a god killer would do in a realm of living gods. I wanted to test Thor, to create scenarios that would reveal truths about our family's power structure. You risked our realm for entertainment? Odin's voice could have shattered stone. I risked our realm to prove we'd grown complacent. Loki shot back, his facade of calm cracking. When was the last time Asgard faced a genuine threat? When was the last time Thor actually had to fight for his life? We've become arrogant, Father. Gods playing at being gods while the universe changes around us. I thought introducing real danger would... Would what? Thor snarled. Nearly get me killed? Traumatize Asgard's people? Prove that you're still the jealous, scheming... Would prove that we're vulnerable. Loki's shout echoed through the chamber. And I was right. Because while you were all focused on the ghost of Sparta, someone else, Someone I didn't account for infiltrated our armory and stole the casket of ancient winters. Don't you see? My scheme was surface-level chaos. This is precision. This is someone who knew exactly what to take and when to take it. Kratos lowered his axe slightly, studying Loki with the analytical eye of someone who dealt with divine manipulators before. You're afraid. Beneath the bravado, you're genuinely afraid of whoever did this. Loki's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw. Yes, because I know every player in the 9 realms who could pull off a heist like this, and none of them should have been able to bypass my wards, my spells, my contingencies. Whoever took the casket is either impossibly lucky or working with information they shouldn't possess. Information like what? Steve asked, his tactical mind already piecing together possibilities. Like knowing exactly when Heimdall would be distracted containing the dimensional rift. Loki counted off on his fingers. Like knowing the armory's defenses would be weakened by Father's attention being on Kratos. Like knowing which guards would be at which posts during the shift change. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned down to the second. Odin struck Gungnir against the floor, and every Asgardian in the room snapped to attention. Heimdall, report. Who entered the armory during the breach? The Guardian's voice echoed from his distant observatory. That's what troubles me, All-Father. I saw no one. My gaze was partially diverted to tracking the dimensional energies. But even so, I should have glimpsed something. Whoever did this knew how to blind even my sight. Impossible, Thor breathed. Nothing escapes Heimdall's watch. Dark magic could, Loki said quietly. Magic from realms beyond our understanding. Or... He hesitated, looking genuinely reluctant to continue. Or, Kratos prompted, his patience for divine politics wearing thin. Or someone from outside our reality entirely. Someone who doesn't register to Heimdall's sight because they don't belong to any of the 9 realms. The implication settled over them like a shroud. Steve vocalized what they were all thinking. You mean someone from another universe? Like Kratos? Exactly like Kratos. Loki confirmed. The rift I opened didn't just bring him here. It created a weak point in dimensional barriers. A skilled sorcerer or reality manipulator could have used that weakness to slip through undetected. Atreus, who had been silent until now, spoke up. But Father came through because you pulled him specifically. If someone else came through, wouldn't they need similar power? Power to target and navigate between realities? Unless they were already watching, Kratos said grimly. Unless they saw the rift open and simply followed. Odin's expression grew even more grave. If that's true, then we face a multiversal threat. An enemy who can move between realities, strike from dimensions we cannot easily reach, and possesses knowledge of Asgard's defenses. The casket alone could freeze planets, but in the hands of someone with dimensional travel capabilities, they could move from realm to realm, conquering and freezing entire civilizations before anyone could respond. Steve finished. That's an extinction-level threat. Thor finally lowered Mjolnir, though his grip remained white-knuckled. Loki, if you're lying, if this is another layer to your schemes, brother, Loki's voice was uncharacteristically earnest. I swear on Mother's memory, this isn't my doing. I'm a trickster, not a monster. I create chaos, not apocalypses. Whoever has the casket, whatever their plans, I want them stopped as much as you do. Kratos watched the exchange with the detachment of someone who'd seen countless family dramas among gods. but he recognized truth when he heard it, even from a liar. Loki was genuinely frightened, which meant the threat was real. "Then we hunt them," Kratos said simply. "Track whoever took the casket. Find them. Stop them. I've done this before." "Against gods in your realm," Odin cautioned. "This may be something beyond even your experience, Ghost of Sparta. A multiversal threat operates by different rules." "Rules can be broken," Kratos replied. "I've proven that. Besides," he looked at Atreus, "I have motivation beyond duty. If this threat endangers my son, I will end it. Reality-hopping powers or not." Steve nodded, already formulating strategy. "We need information. Can we track the casket's energy signature?" "I can try," Loki offered. "Its magic leaves traces. But if the thief took it into another dimension, the trail will be nearly impossible to follow." "Nearly impossible isn't impossible," Thor said, some of his confidence returning. "And we have assets they don't expect. Kratos brings experience killing the unkillable. Captain Rogers brings tactical brilliance. I bring the power of the storm. And you, Loki, much as I hate to admit it, bring an understanding of dimensional magic none of the rest of us possess. Are we working together?" Loki sounded almost hopeful beneath his skepticism. "All of us? The god of thunder, the god of mischief, the ghost of Sparta and Midgard's champion?" "We're stopping a threat," Steve corrected. "Don't confuse necessity with friendship. Friendship is built through shared trials," Odin intoned, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Perhaps this crisis will forge bonds, or perhaps it will reveal weaknesses. Either way, the casket must be recovered before it's used. You have my blessing and my resources. Heimdall will guide you. The Einherjar will provide support. But the core team must be you five." His eye found Atreus. 4 warriors and 1 wise voice to keep them from tearing each other apart. Atreus straightened under the attention. "I won't let them fight each other. Not while there's a real enemy to face." "Then it's settled," Steve said. "We need a base of operations, a way to track dimensional signatures, and weapons capable of handling threats from multiple realities." "The armory still has weapons," Thor offered. "And Father's vault contains artifacts from across the 9 realms. If we're hunting something multiversal, we'll need tools that transcend normal physics." Loki's eyes gleamed. "I know exactly which artifacts might help. Though, Father, you should know, some of them are technically forbidden for use." "Desperate times," Odin replied grimly. "Take what you need. But Loki, if I discover this entire crisis is an elaborate scheme to access forbidden items, I will personally seal you in the deepest dungeon of Asgard until the stars grow cold." "Understood," Loki said, though his tone suggested he'd already cataloged which forbidden items might be useful for future schemes. Old habits. As they prepared to move, Kratos pulled Thor aside. "Your brother, can he be trusted?" Thor considered, then answered with brutal honesty, "No. Loki can never be fully trusted. But he's useful, he's intelligent, and right now he's genuinely frightened. Fear makes him focused. As long as the threat remains, he'll work with us because it serves his survival. And after? After, he'll probably try to steal something, betray someone, and create new chaos. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today we have bigger concerns." Kratos nodded, satisfied with the pragmatic answer. He'd worked with untrustworthy allies before. Orcos, even Athena for a time. As long as goals aligned, temporary alliances functioned. And if Loki betrayed them later? Well, Kratos had killed trickster gods before. One more wouldn't pose a challenge. They gathered in Asgard's vault 30 minutes later, surrounded by treasures and weapons from countless conquests. The eternal flame flickered in its brazier. The tablet of life and time gleamed on its pedestal. The destroyer armor loomed in the shadows, and Loki was already rifling through artifacts with practiced efficiency. This, he held up a crystalline sphere, tracks temporal anomalies. If our thief jumps between dimensions, they'll leave temporal distortions. This will let us follow. He pocketed it. And this, a silver bracelet, shields the wearer from reality manipulation. Useful if we face a sorcerer. What about something that can hurt them? Kratos asked. Your fancy tracking devices mean nothing if we can't kill the target. Loki's smile turned sharp. Ah, now there's where it gets interesting. He moved deeper into the vault, to a section covered in warning runes. Father, permission to access the Odin sword? Absolutely not, Odin replied immediately. That blade's power is too dangerous, even for controlled use. Then what about this? Loki unveiled a spear wrapped in chains. The spear of Levitine, forged in Muspelheim, quenched in Niflheim's ice. It exists in multiple states simultaneously. Fire and ice, creation and destruction. A weapon that transcends normal physical laws. Thor examined it skeptically. That spear is cursed. Every wielder has eventually gone mad. Every Asgardian wielder, Loki corrected. But Kratos isn't Asgardian, and he's already intimate with divine madness, aren't you, Ghost of Sparta? Kratos approached the spear, feeling its power resonating with something deep in his core. It reminded him of the blades of chaos, weapons that carried their own terrible will. But where the blades had been forced upon him, this spear called to him as an equal. I'll take it, he decided. If it tries to control me, I'll break it. I've mastered cursed weapons before. That's the spirit, Loki said cheerfully. Literal spirit in this case. The spear contains the essence of Surtur's flames and the frost giant's eternal winter. It might actually kill you just from touching it. Then we'll find out. Kratos grasped the spear's shaft. Power exploded through him. Fire and ice warring in his blood, ancient rage meeting his own. For a moment, his vision went white with agony. Then his own will, forged through decades of suffering, crushed down on the weapon's consciousness. The spear went silent, subservient, recognizing something even older and angrier than itself. When Kratos opened his eyes, they glowed with prismatic energy, fire red and ice blue swirling together. It will serve. Now, Loki, find me the trail. Show me where our thief has gone. And pray to whatever gods you still believe in that I reach them before they use that casket. Loki activated the tracking sphere. Immediately, it projected lines of energy into the air. Dimensional signatures, temporal distortions, reality fractures. Most were faint, residue from his original rift. But one shone brighter than the rest, a fresh wound in space-time leading somewhere else. There, Loki whispered. That's our path. But it leads to... He paused, checking his instruments again, disbelief crossing his features. That's impossible. What? Steve demanded. Where does it lead? Midgard, Loki said slowly. Specifically to a place in your realm called New Mexico, a small town named Puente Antiguo. Thor's face went pale. Where I first arrived on Midgard. Where the Bifrost site is still unstable from my exile. Not a coincidence, Kratos said. The thief knows your history, knows your weaknesses. They're drawing us to a location with emotional significance. He looked at Thor. which means this is a trap. Obviously a trap, Loki agreed. But also our only lead. If we don't follow, they'll use the casket, and entire populations will freeze. If we do follow, we spring the trap on our terms, Steve finished. We go in prepared, we expect ambush, and we turn their advantage into our opportunity. Odin stepped forward. Heimdall will open the Bifrost. You'll have one chance. If the thief detects your arrival and escapes into another dimension, the trail will go cold. Strike fast, strike hard, and bring back my realm's stolen property. And the thief? Kratos asked. Dead or alive? I would prefer answers, Odin said. But I understand that battles don't always allow for preference. Use your judgment. Kratos nodded, satisfied. No artificial restraints, no demands for mercy. Just soldiers given a mission and the authority to complete it, however necessary. Finally, a king who understood war. They assembled at Heimdall's observatory. Thor with Mjolnir crackling, Loki with pockets full of magical artifacts, Steve wearing his shield in determination, Kratos bearing the spear of Levitine alongside his usual weapons, and Atreus carrying his bow with arrows fletched in Asgardian silver. Your son? Steve questioned. This is going to be dangerous. My son has faced down Baldur the Invulnerable and survived Helheim, Kratos replied. He comes. I won't leave him vulnerable in a strange realm while we fight unknown enemies. Besides, Atreus added, someone needs to make sure you all don't kill each other before you reach the actual bad guy. Thor laughed. The boy has a point. Very well, 6 warriors for the mission. Heimdall, send us through, and keep watch. If this goes poorly, Father will need to know immediately. The Guardian nodded, placing his sword into the Bifrost's control mechanism. Rainbow light swirled, energy building to transport them across the cosmos. But just before they departed, Loki leaned close to Kratos and whispered, If I were you, Ghost of Sparta, I'd be wondering why someone would steal the casket and lure us specifically to New Mexico. What's in that town besides memories and an old Bifrost site? What are you implying, trickster? I'm implying that maybe, just maybe, this isn't about the casket at all. Maybe the casket is bait, and what they really want is you. Before Kratos could respond, the Bifrost activated and reality dissolved into streaming colors and cosmic light. They were gone, hurtling toward Earth, toward answers, and toward whatever trap awaited them in the desert. They materialized in the middle of Puente Antiguo's main street at 3 in the afternoon. The Bifrost's landing scorched a perfect circle into the asphalt, sending locals scrambling and cars screeching to avoid the sudden appearance of 6 armored figures. A shopkeeper dropped his groceries. A child pointed, eyes wide with wonder. And somewhere, someone was already calling the authorities about more aliens in New Mexico. Subtle, Steve muttered, shield at the ready as he scanned for immediate threats. Subtlety is overrated, Thor replied, though he looked uncomfortable being back in this town. Memories flickered across his face. Jane Foster, his time as a mortal, learning humility. Kratos noticed and filed it away. Emotional attachments made gods vulnerable. Useful information. The town looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Desert heat shimmered off buildings. Locals stared but kept their distance, smartphones already recording everything. No sign of anyone with a casket. No obvious threats. Just a small New Mexico town going about its day, now interrupted by otherworldly warriors. The trail ends here? Kratos asked Loki, who was consulting his tracking sphere. Not ends. Goes cold, Loki corrected, his expression troubled. The dimensional signature is everywhere and nowhere. It's like whoever came through deliberately scattered their energy to prevent tracking. So we're blind, Steve said. No target, no direction. Just waiting for them to make the first move. Unacceptable. Kratos began walking down the street, his predatory gaze sweeping across every window, every shadow. If our enemy wants us here, they're watching. Atreus, do you sense anything? Your abilities sometimes perceive what others miss. The boy closed his eyes, focusing on the way his mother had taught him to feel the world's magic. For a moment, nothing. Then, there, something cold, really cold. Not natural cold, but wrong cold, like winter given hatred. The casket, Thor said grimly. It's being used. Where, boy? Atreus pointed toward the town's outskirts, where the desert stretched to mountains beyond. That direction. Maybe a mile out. But it's faint, like they're keeping it contained. Or charging it up, Loki suggested darkly. The casket can be used gradually or unleashed all at once. If someone's preparing a full activation, how bad? Steve asked. Imagine an explosion of absolute zero, Loki explained. Everything within miles, flash frozen solid. Buildings, people, landscape, all preserved in perfect ice. Then the cold spreads outward at exponential rates, consuming more territory every hour until intervention stops it. How do we stop it? Retrieve the casket, close it, and pray the user hasn't already triggered the cascade effect. If they have, Loki trailed off, but the implication was clear. They'd be too late to save anyone. Then we move, now. Kratos started toward the desert, continued 13 at a combat pace. The others followed, their disparate group drawing stares and whispers from locals. Should we evacuate the town? Steve asked, his instinct to protect civilians warring with tactical necessity. No time, Thor replied. And if we cause a panic, the enemy might activate the casket immediately out of spite. Better to approach quietly, assess, then strike. They moved beyond the town's edge into scrubland and rock formations baked under desert sun. The temperature soared easily over 100 degrees. But with each step, Kratos noticed something wrong. His breath misted. Frost formed on nearby cacti, and the heat wasn't quite reaching them anymore. We're entering the casket's sphere of influence, Loki warned. Whoever's using it has created a localized environmental bubble. Temperature manipulation on this scale requires immense control. Or immense desperation, Steve countered. Maybe they don't know how to use it properly, and they're just pouring power in, hoping for results. Let's hope you're right, Thor said, though his tone suggested he doubted it. They crested a ridge and found their answer. In a shallow valley below, surrounded by frozen rock formations turned to glacial sculptures, stood a figure Kratos recognized immediately from his understanding of power and presence. Not a god, not exactly, but something that had touched divinity and been forever changed. The figure was humanoid, wrapped in tattered robes that seemed to shift between states of matter, solid, liquid, gas, all simultaneously. In their hands, the casket of ancient winters pulsed with blue energy, frost spreading from it in beautiful, deadly patterns. But what caught Kratos' attention was the dimensional rift behind them. A tear in reality similar to the one he'd come through. Except this one showed not realms or worlds, but infinite possibilities. Endless variations of the same moment, branching and diverging. Behold, the figure's voice echoed with layered tones, as if spoken from multiple mouths at once. The ghost of Sparta arrives. Punctual, predictable, perfect. You planned all of this, Kratos stated. The theft, the trail, bringing us here. Why? The figure turned, and beneath their hood, Kratos glimpsed a face that flickered between identities. Human, alien, something utterly other. Because you are what I need, God Killer. You are the weapon that ends pantheons, and I require an ending. You could have just asked, Loki said, trying to sound casual despite obvious nervousness. I'm quite good at ending things. What exactly needs ending? Everything. The figure gestured to the rift. All realities, every dimension, every possibility. I have seen them all, lived them all, died in them all. Infinite variations of infinite suffering. And the only solution, the only peace, is to freeze it all. Make it stop, forever. Steve's tactical mind immediately grasped the horror. You're planning to use the casket on the multiverse itself. Freeze every reality. Not planning, beginning. The figure raised the casket higher. The cold intensified. Ice spread faster. And through the rift, they could see other worlds starting to frost over. Dimensions beginning to freeze under impossible winter. I've seen what comes. The collapse. The wars. The Kang variants tearing reality apart. Secret wars consuming what remains. Better to end it cleanly than watch it suffer. You're insane, Thor declared, Mjolnir spinning. You'd kill infinite lives to prevent suffering. I am infinite lives, the figure replied. I am every version of myself that ever was or could be. Compressed into singular awareness after touching a weapon you Asgardians never should have kept. The casket showed me truth, showed me that existence itself is the curse, and now I wield the tool to cure it. Kratos understood then. This being had looked into the multiverse the way he'd looked into the future after conquering Olympus, and seen only pain, only endless cycles of conflict and loss. They'd chosen the same solution he once had. If you can't save everything, destroy it all. I know what you're thinking, Ghost of Sparta, the figure said, seeming to read his expression. You understand me. You destroyed your entire pantheon because they hurt you. Imagine if you'd had the power to destroy all pantheons across all realities. Wouldn't you have? Wouldn't you have ended the possibility of gods hurting anyone ever again? The question hit Kratos like a physical blow, because the answer was yes. In his darkest moments, consumed by rage, he absolutely would have. He'd have torn down not just Olympus, but every divine realm, every god across every possible world, if given the chance. Father? Atreus' voice was small, frightened by the silence that followed. No, Kratos said finally, and the word carried absolute conviction. I would not, because my son taught me that destruction isn't solution, it's surrender. Ending existence doesn't prevent suffering, it prevents everything. Joy, growth, second chances, all gone because one mind decided existence wasn't worth the pain. Pretty words from a god killer, the figure mocked. How many died by your hands before you learned that lesson? Hundreds? Thousands? Too many, Kratos admitted. Which is why I recognize the path you're walking. I've traveled it. I know where it ends. And I won't let you make the same mistake I did. You can't stop me. I exist across dimensions. Kill this me, and another activates the casket. Stop that one, and hundreds more begin the cascade. I am inevitable, because I am infinite. Loki studied the rift with narrowed eyes. Clever. You've created quantum redundancy, every version of yourself in every reality working simultaneously. Even if we close the casket here, others continue the work elsewhere. He glanced at Kratos. This is beyond violence. You can't kill them all. Watch me try. Kratos growled, raising the spear of Levitine. The weapon blazed with fire and ice, responding to his will. Wait! Steve stepped forward. Shield at ready, but not attacking. If violence won't work, what about reason? You said you've lived infinite variations. So you've lived versions where things worked out, where reality didn't collapse, where people found peace. Why choose to end those possibilities too? Because they're minority outcomes, the figure replied. For every reality where things improve, 10,000 suffer. The math is simple. Math isn't morality, Steve countered. You're making a choice to murder infinite innocent lives based on probability. That's not mercy. That's cowardice. The figure's layered voice turned cold. You dare judge me, mortal? You who live one tiny life in one tiny reality? I dare judge someone committing genocide on a multiversal scale, yes, Steve replied firmly. And I'll fight to stop you, no matter how impossible the odds. Thor stepped beside him, lightning dancing across his armor. As will I. Freezing the multiverse to prevent suffering is no different than destroying it to prevent conflict. Either way, you steal choice from infinite beings. That makes you a tyrant, not a savior. Kratos didn't fight like someone trying to win. He fought like someone trying to survive long enough to break the enemy's will. The spear of Levitine blazed in his hands, fire and ice spiraling together in impossible harmony. Each thrust targeted not where the multidimensional figure was, but where they would be. Anticipating phase shifts through pure combat instinct honed across centuries. The figure dodged into another dimension. Kratos followed. Father! Atreus' shout was distant, muffled by dimensional barriers. But Kratos had made his choice. This enemy thought existing across multiple realities made them untouchable. They'd never faced someone who'd torn through the fabric of fate itself, who'd killed sisters who controlled destiny, who'd made impossibility bow to sheer stubborn fury. The space between dimensions was chaos. Colors that had no names, sounds that preceded hearing, sensations that violated physics. But Kratos planted his feet in nothing and pulled the figure toward him with the blades of chaos, their chains wrapping around limbs that existed in 12 states simultaneously. You can't hold me, the figure screamed, their voice fragmenting across realities. I am infinite. So was Zeus. Kratos yanked them close, driving the spear of Levitine through their chest. The weapon's dual nature, creation and destruction, fire and ice, disrupted their quantum state. For one critical moment, they became singular, solid, vulnerable, and Kratos activated Spartan rage. Red energy exploded through dimensional barriers. Kratos' fury became physical force, hammering the figure again and again. Each blow collapsing their multiversal redundancy, forcing them to exist in fewer and fewer realities. The casket of ancient winters fell from their grasp, tumbling through dimensional space. Thor caught it mid-fall, manifesting in the dimensional void through sheer divine will and Mjolnir's power. I have it. Kratos, get out of there. But Kratos couldn't leave. Not yet. The figure was still conscious, still dangerous, still trying to split themselves across realities to escape. He had to finish this. Completely. You think you've won? The figure gasped, their form stabilizing into something more human, more vulnerable. You've only stopped one attempt. Others are already beginning. Across infinite realities, infinite versions of me are activating infinite caskets. You've saved this world. You haven't saved them all? Then I'll hunt them all, Kratos replied coldly. Reality by reality, dimension by dimension. I've killed pantheons. I'll kill infinite versions of you if necessary. That would take eternity. I have time. The figure laughed, blood bubbling from their lips. No, you don't. Because while you were focused on me, the real cascade already started. I was never the threat, God Killer. I was the distraction. Kratos' blood went cold, colder than any casket-induced winter. What? Reality snapped back like rubber stretched too far. Kratos was ejected from dimensional space, slamming into New Mexico dirt hard enough to crater the ground. The figure fell beside him, dying, their multiversal connection severed. But they were smiling. "Look," they whispered, pointing skyward with a trembling hand. "Look at what's really coming." Kratos looked up and understood. The sky was tearing. Not one rift, but thousands, each showing different realities, and each showing the same thing happening simultaneously. In every visible dimension, winter was spreading. Not from the casket they'd recovered, but from dozens of others. The figure hadn't been working alone. They'd been coordinating with variants, with versions of themselves across the multiverse. And while everyone had focused on stopping one threat, the others had activated. "No," Thor breathed, clutching the casket they'd recovered uselessly. "This was all a diversion," Loki finished, his voice hollow. "We stopped one thread while ignoring the tapestry. Classic multiversal warfare. How did I not see it?" Ravana's expression was grim. "Because whoever coordinated this understands temporal mechanics better than anyone I've ever encountered. They knew exactly how to blind even TVA-level observation. This wasn't random variants working independently. This was orchestrated, planned. Someone is using these multiversal freeze events as..." She trailed off, calculations visible behind her eyes. "Oh no." "Oh no?" Steve repeated. What does "oh no" mean from someone who manages timelines? "It means this isn't about freezing the multiverse," Ravana explained rapidly. "It's about creating multiversal anchor points, locations where reality is locked in stasis. And if you create enough of them in the right configuration across enough dimensions..." Her face paled. "You create a net, a cage. Something to trap or control multiversal entities that normally operate beyond conventional containment." "Like who?" Atreus asked, though dread was already filling his voice. "Like Kang," Ravana whispered. "Or the Beyonders, or any cosmic entity powerful enough to reshape reality. Someone is building a multiversal prison, and they're using these freeze cascades as the bars." The dying figure laughed wetly. "Finally, someone who sees, yes, the cage, the beautiful, necessary cage. Because what's coming, what's already here, needs to be stopped. The Conqueror, the Dynasty, the Council, all of them, frozen in perfect ice, unable to ruin any more realities." "Who are you?" Kratos demanded, kneeling beside them. "Who's coordinating this?" "I am... will be..." The figure's eyes lost focus. "A victim. Someone who lost everything to Kang variants. Someone who saw the only solution and took it. But I'm just one voice in the choir. The real architect." They smiled one last time. "Ask the God of Stories. He knows. He's always known." They died, body dissolving into quantum particles that scattered across dimensions. Gone. But their words hung like a curse. Loki went very still. The God of Stories. That's an old title. Very old. From futures that shouldn't exist yet. "Loki," Thor said carefully, "what aren't you telling us?" "I'm telling you that we're not dealing with random variants or desperate victims," Loki replied. his voice shaking with something between fear and awe. We're dealing with someone who understands the multiverse's narrative structure. Someone who can see stories before they're written and rewrite them entirely. If the god of stories is involved, if that version of me is actually orchestrating this, that version of you. Steve caught the implication immediately. You're saying a future Loki is behind this? A Loki from a timeline where I learned to manipulate stories themselves, where I became more than just a trickster, a force that shapes narratives across all realities. Loki looked haunted. If he's building a cage for Kang, if he's trying to prevent the dynasty and secret wars by freezing key multiversal junctures, then he's not just changing timelines. He's trying to rewrite the entire story of the multiverse. And we just killed one of his pawns, Kratos said grimly. Which means he knows we're aware. Which means he'll adapt. Ravana was already working her temporal technology, screens of data flowing through the air. If this god of stories exists, he's operating outside my observation capacity. That shouldn't be possible. The TVA, what remains of it, should have detected narrative manipulation on this scale. Unless the TVA is already compromised, Thor suggested. Unless whoever this is has been rewriting the story all along. Atreus tugged on Kratos' arm. Father, the sky. The rifts were growing, not just showing frozen realities, but connecting them, creating pathways between dimensions. And through those pathways, cold wind began to blow, carrying with it the accumulated winter of 1,000 freezing worlds. The temperature in New Mexico dropped 50 degrees in seconds. Ice spread across the desert. In Puente Antiguo, people who'd huddled in buildings trying to escape the first freeze found themselves facing a second, worse assault. Frost claimed everything. We need to close these rifts, Steve said, already moving toward the nearest one despite having no idea how to accomplish it. If they stay open, every frozen reality will pour its winter into ours. I can't close them all, Loki admitted. Not simultaneously. Not with this many. You'd need someone who exists outside dimensional constraints, Ravana interrupted. Someone who isn't bound to single reality. Someone who... She looked at Kratos with sudden, terrible understanding. Someone who's already died and killed across multiple mythological frameworks. Someone whose existence is paradoxical enough that reality treats them as variable. You want me to close dimensional rifts? Kratos said flatly. I'm a warrior, not a sorcerer. You're a god-killer who survived things that should have erased you from existence, Ravana countered. Your very nature is anathema to cosmic order. The spear of Levitain you're carrying? It exists in multiple states simultaneously, exactly like these rifts. If you channel your Spartan rage through it, while I manipulate temporal flow, we might be able to create a cascade collapse. Seal every rift at once by making reality reject their existence. Might? Thor repeated skeptically. 73% chance of success, Ravana said. 20% chance it does nothing. 7% chance it tears Kratos apart across infinite dimensions and erases him from all realities simultaneously. I've faced worse odds, Kratos said, which wasn't entirely true but sounded impressive. He looked at Atreus. Boy, if this doesn't work, it'll work. Atreus interrupted fiercely. Because you're the god killer. You don't lose, you don't quit, you survive everything. So survive this. The simple faith in his son's voice steadied something in Kratos' core. He'd torn down Olympus for vengeance. He'd conquered Norse gods for survival. Now he'd save the multiverse for family. Funny how motivations evolved. "Tell me what to do," he said to Ravana. She moved quickly, placing devices around him that hummed with temporal energy. "When I activate these, you'll exist in all moments simultaneously, past, present, and infinite futures. You'll feel every version of yourself that could exist. Don't let it overwhelm you. Focus on one truth. You are Kratos. You are singular. You are defined by choice, not destiny." "I fought fate before," Kratos replied. "I won then. I'll win now." "Good. Because when I activate this, you'll need to drive that spear into the dimensional nexus point." She indicated a spot where multiple rifts intersected. "And release all your rage at once. The spear's dual nature combined with your paradoxical existence should create a rejection wave. Reality will seal the rifts to prevent further contamination." "Should," Loki muttered. "That's reassuring." "Do you have a better plan?" Ravana snapped. "Several, but none with higher success probability. Carry on." Thor gripped Kratos' shoulder. "If you die doing this, I'll tell stories of your courage in Asgard's halls until the stars grow cold." "If I die doing this," Kratos replied, "make sure my son gets home. That's all that matters. You have my word." The return to Asgard was silent. Heimdall transported them through the Bifrost, rainbow light unable to erase the weight of what they'd witnessed. The casket they'd recovered sat in Thor's hands like a guilty verdict. One threat stopped while dozens more activated across realities beyond reach. Odin waited in the throne room, Gungnir planted before him, his single eye reading the outcome on their faces before anyone spoke. "You stopped the immediate threat," he observed, "but not the war." "No, All-Father," Thor admitted, setting the casket at his father's feet. "The war has only begun, and we're fighting an enemy who rewrites stories, who operates from futures that haven't happened yet, who uses the multiverse itself as their battlefield." "The god of stories?" Odin said quietly. "I had hoped that particular variant would never emerge. That certain timelines would remain theoretical." He looked at Loki with something between disappointment and resignation. "My son, you have walked dark paths. But this version of you, the one who learned to manipulate narrative itself, has surpassed even my worst fears about your potential." Loki flinched. I'm not him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's a future that might not happen." "Every future happens somewhere," Ravana interjected, still present to deliver her report to whatever authorities remained. "The question is whether we're living in a timeline that leads to God of Stories Loki, or one that branches away. And whether your actions now determine which path reality follows." "Heavy philosophical burden for one day," Steve muttered. He was exhausted, emotionally and physically. Fighting dimensional entities was outside even his enhanced capabilities. Give him Hydra, Red Skull, enemies he could punch, not reality manipulators who operated on conceptual levels. Kratos stood apart from the group, Atreus beside him, both watching the political maneuvering with detachment. They'd done their part, stopped to the threat. Now gods and cosmic entities could debate philosophy, while Kratos focused on what actually mattered, getting his son home safely. "You're leaving," Odin stated, reading Kratos' body language. "You've fulfilled your obligation. You want to return to your realm." "Yes," Kratos replied bluntly. "This isn't my war. These aren't my gods. I came here by accident, fought because I had to, and now I want to take my son home before more cosmic nonsense drags us into conflicts we didn't choose." "Noble sentiment," Odin said. But I'm afraid it's not that simple. When you close those dimensional rifts, you created a paradox. Your existence is now quantum entangled with multiple realities. Returning home would destabilize your original realm, possibly collapse it entirely. The words hung like a death sentence. Atreus looked stricken. Kratos' expression went dangerously cold. Explain. Ravana pulled up holographic data, showing the dimensional math. When you channeled Spartan rage through the spear while existing in all moments simultaneously, you became a multiversal anchor point. You're now tied to this reality. Marvel Earth, Asgard, this dimensional framework. Returning to your Norse mythology realm would be like removing a load-bearing wall from reality's structure. Both realms would suffer catastrophic dimensional collapse. You're saying we're trapped here, Atreus whispered. I'm saying you're bound here, Ravana corrected gently. Not trapped, bound. There's a difference. Trap implies you're held against your will. Binding means you're part of the structure now. Essential. Removing you causes damage. Kratos' hands clenched into fists. After everything, after learning restraint, after choosing wisdom over violence, after saving the multiverse, this was his reward? Exile? Separation from his home, his realm, everything he'd fought to protect? Unacceptable. I'll tear through dimensions if necessary. I've broken fate before. I'll break physics now. And kill countless innocents in the process, Odin said sharply. Don't pretend you haven't learned that lesson, Kratos. You know what wanton destruction costs. Would you truly doom your home realm to save yourself from inconvenience? Inconvenience? Kratos' voice was lethal. You call exile from everything I know. Father. Atreus grabbed his arm. Stop. Listen to yourself. You sound like the old you. The one who'd burn everything down if it meant getting what you wanted. The accusation cut deeper than any weapon. Because Atreus was right. Kratos was reverting to patterns, to the ghost of Sparta who solved problems through overwhelming force. And that version of himself had destroyed Olympus, killed innocents, created suffering in the name of personal justice. He took a slow breath, forcing rage down into controlled channels. Then what do you propose, All-Father? That we simply accept this exile? Live here among your realm's gods while our home continues without us? I propose, Odin said carefully, that you consider this less exile and more opportunity. You sought Thor's power to protect your son from divine threats. Here, you're surrounded by gods, warriors, and heroes who face cosmic challenges daily. Atreus could learn from the best teachers in multiple realms. You could apply your unique skills towards stopping threats before they metastasize. You want to recruit us? Kratos said flatly. I want to offer you purpose, Odin corrected. You're a warrior without a war, a protector with nothing left to protect in your original realm. Here, threats emerge constantly. The multiverse itself is fracturing. And you've already proven you can make a difference when properly motivated. Thor stepped forward. He's right, Kratos. I know it's not ideal. But consider, if another threat like the god of stories emerges, wouldn't you want to be in position to stop it? Before it threatens your son? Before it reaches your home realm through dimensional connections? You're making logical arguments, Kratos replied. But logic doesn't change that we've been forced into this situation through circumstances beyond our control. I don't respond well to being manipulated into compliance. No one's manipulating you, Steve said. They're offering you a choice. Stay here, work with us, help prevent multiversal catastrophes, or force your way home and potentially destroy everything you've built. Those are your options. Neither is perfect, but one is clearly better than the other. Loki, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. If it helps, Kratos, consider that your presence here fundamentally changes the power dynamic. Gods in this realm, myself included, have operated with certain assumptions about our supremacy. You represent the antithesis of those assumptions. You're living proof that gods can be killed, that power isn't permanent, that even divine authority can be questioned and overthrown. That actually terrifies me, and it should terrify every god who's grown complacent. Is this supposed to convince me to stay? Kratos asked dryly. It's supposed to show you that you matter here in ways you might not in your home realm, Loki replied. Your mythology's gods are mostly dead or distant. What purpose do you serve there besides existing? Here, your very presence forces accountability. That's powerful. That's meaningful. Atreus looked up at his father with eyes that held both fear and hope. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is where we're supposed to be. I don't want to leave home, but I also don't want you to become what you were before. And if staying here means you keep growing, keep learning to be better, isn't that worth considering? The wisdom from such a young voice nearly broke something in Kratos' chest. His son, his brilliant, compassionate son, understood the situation more clearly than any god or soldier. This wasn't about pride or preference. It was about who Kratos chose to be moving forward. If we stay, Kratos said slowly, each word carefully measured, we do so on our terms. I don't join Asgard's forces. I don't swear fealty to any pantheon. I protect my son and respond to threats as I see fit. Are those conditions acceptable? Odin considered, then nodded. Acceptable. You'll be granted a residence in Asgard, resources for your needs, and access to our knowledge. In return, when threats emerge that require your particular expertise, we'll call on you, and you'll have option to refuse if circumstances warrant. Not much of a deal, Thor muttered. He gets everything and commits to nothing. He saved the multiverse today, Odin replied. That earns considerable latitude. Besides, trying to force Kratos into contracts or obligations would end poorly for everyone involved. Better to trust his sense of responsibility. Steve extended his hand again. Does this mean we're allies, officially? Kratos looked at the hand, at Steve's honest expression, at the coalition forming around him. It means I'll fight beside you when our interests align. Don't mistake that for friendship or loyalty beyond pragmatism. I've worked with worse, Steve said, shaking firmly. Welcome to Earth's defense, God Killer. Try not to destroy any major cities. No promises. The tension broke into something resembling accord. Not trust, not yet, but acknowledgement of shared purpose. Kratos would stay because the alternative was worse. And perhaps, buried beneath his pragmatic reasoning, because some part of him recognized opportunity when it presented itself. Now what? Atreus asked. Ravana began packing her equipment. Now I return to the TVA and report that we have a god killer operating in this dimensional framework. They'll want to establish protocols, maybe monitoring. Nothing intrusive, she added quickly, seeing Kratos' expression darken. Just observation to ensure your presence doesn't create temporal anomalies. And the god of stories? Loki pressed. The future me who's orchestrating multiversal freeze events. What about him? That, Ravana said grimly, is beyond my authority. Stopping your future self requires resources the current TVA doesn't have. We'd need allies, Cosmic entities willing to intervene, maybe even... She hesitated. Kang variants themselves. Fight fire with fire. Absolutely not, Thor declared. Allying with Kang is madness. All alliances are madness until circumstances make them necessary, Odin observed. But that's a bridge to cross when reached. For now, we've stabilized immediate threats, prevented multiversal cascade, created foundation for future cooperation. These are victories worth acknowledging. Small victories, Kratos said. The real threat is still out there, growing, planning. This god of stories has shown he operates beyond normal constraints. He'll adapt, create new strategies, and target us specifically now that we've disrupted his plans. Then we'll be ready, Steve replied with conviction. That's what we do. Train, prepare, and respond to threats as they emerge. It's not perfect, but it's how you survive in a universe that keeps throwing impossible challenges. Kratos recognized the soldier's mindset. Survive one battle, prepare for the next. Never stop fighting because stopping means dying. It was familiar, comfortable even. Very well, Captain. We'll see if your realm's warriors can keep pace with a god killer. We'll see if a god killer can keep pace with the Avengers, Steve countered with a slight smile. Thor laughed, clapping both on the shoulders. Now that's settled. I need rest, food, and enough mead to forget I nearly died 3 times today. Who's joining me? I'm in, Loki said immediately. Near-death experiences make excellent drinking stories. You weren't anywhere near death, Thor accused. I was stressed. That counts. As they moved toward Asgard's great hall, their banter fading into distance, Kratos and Atreus remained in the throne room. Odin studied them with his ancient, knowing gaze. You've made the right choice, the Allfather said quietly. For what it's worth. Time will tell, Kratos replied. I've made what seemed like right choices before, only to discover they led to ruin. But for my son's sake, I'll try to believe this time is different. It is different, Odin assured him. Because you're different. The ghost of Sparta who destroyed Olympus would never have stopped when his son asked. Would never have considered consequences beyond immediate goals. That you did proves growth. And growth, Kratos, is what separates monsters from men. Or in your case, from gods. The words settled over him like a mantle, heavy but earned. He'd spent so long being the monster, the weapon, the unstoppable force that he'd forgotten what it meant to simply be. To grow, to change, to choose wisdom over wrath. Come on, Father, Atreus said, tugging his hand. Let's go find our new home. I want to explore Asgard properly. See the libraries, meet the people, learn about this realm's magic. 6 months passed like sand through cupped hands, too fast to hold, too slow to ignore. Kratos and Atreus established their place in Asgard's hierarchy, which was to say they rejected hierarchy entirely and operated by their own rules. Odin gave them a residence on the city's edge, close enough for quick response, far enough to maintain independence. It suited them perfectly. Atreus flourished. He studied with Asgard scholars, learning their magic systems and comparing them to what his mother had taught. He trained with Einherjar warriors, matching their techniques against his archery. He even sat in Odin's presence during certain court proceedings, absorbing lessons in leadership and diplomacy that Kratos grudgingly admitted were valuable. Kratos adapted, not comfortably, but functionally. He trained daily, maintaining edge through constant discipline. He consulted with Thor on combat techniques, their sparring sessions attracting crowds who'd never seen 2 gods genuinely trying to kill each other for educational purposes. He even tolerated Loki's presence during mission briefings, though tolerated was generous. Didn't immediately attack was more accurate. The Avengers integrated him into their operational framework. Steve called it liaison cooperation. Tony called it keeping the murder god pointed at bad guys. Natasha called it the most dangerous asset we've ever had, assuming he doesn't decide we're the enemy. They were all correct. The first real test came during a frost giant incursion in Norway. S.H.I.E.L.D. detected dimensional breach. Avengers responded and found themselves outnumbered 30-1 against enemies immune to conventional weapons. Steve called for support. Kratos arrived through Bifrost transport, took one look at the situation, and waded into combat like winter itself. He killed 16 frost giants in 4 minutes. Not wounded, not captured. Killed. Brutally. Efficiently. With techniques that made even battle-hardened warriors flinch. When Thor asked if he'd considered non-lethal options, Kratos' response was simple. They were trying to freeze your planet. I stopped them permanently. You're welcome. It created tension. Steve's morality versus Kratos' pragmatism. Thor's honor versus Kratos' brutality. Even Tony, who'd killed plenty, found Kratos' cold efficiency disturbing. He doesn't even seem to enjoy it, Tony mentioned to Steve after reviewing footage. That's what bothers me. He kills like someone doing chores, necessary but tedious. Because to him, it is necessary, Steve replied. He's spent centuries solving problems through overwhelming force. We can't expect him to change overnight just because he's working with us. So what? We just accept that our newest ally is a psychopath? He's not a psychopath. He's traumatized. There's a difference. Psychopaths, continue 2119, lack empathy. Kratos has too much. He's just learned to bury it under layers of violence because that's how he survived. The fact that he stopped when his son asked him to proves he's capable of change. We just need to give him time. Time. The one resource everyone needed and nobody had enough of. Because while Kratos integrated into Marvel's framework, the God of Stories continued his work. More freeze events occurred in distant realities, smaller, more targeted, harder to stop. Ravana reported that the multiversal cage was still being constructed, just more subtly now. Instead of obvious catastrophes, the future Loki used precision strikes, freezing key timeline junctures, sealing specific realities that served as crossroads between dimensions. He's learning from our interference, Loki reported during a strategy meeting in Asgard's war room. Maps of multiversal structure floated holographically above the table. The God of Stories version of me watched us stop his first attempt and adapted. Now he's not trying to freeze everything at once. He's building the cage piece by piece, in places we can't easily reach or monitor. So, we're losing, Bruce Banner said quietly. He'd joined recent meetings, providing scientific perspective on multiversal mechanics. We stopped one attack and he adjusted strategy. Classic asymmetric warfare. The defender has to win every time. The attacker only needs to win once. Unless we change the equation, Kratos said. He stood at the room's edge, arms crossed, having contributed little to tactical discussion until now. Stop playing defense. Find the God of Stories. Kill him. End the threat at its source. Killing a version of Loki who exists outside normal space-time is not simple, Ravana objected. He operates from futures that technically haven't happened yet. How do you kill someone who doesn't currently exist? Everything exists somewhere, Kratos replied. I killed the Sisters of Fate, who controlled destiny itself. I killed Thanatos, the embodiment of death. If this God of Stories can be found, he can be killed. The question isn't capability, it's location. Loki looked uncomfortable. You're talking about killing a future version of me. That's philosophically complex. If you eliminate that timeline's Loki, do I cease to exist? Do I transform into him eventually? Does the timeline split or collapse? Temporal mechanics aren't clean. I don't care about clean, Kratos said. I care about stopping threats to my son's reality. If that means killing you, past, present, or future, then that's what happens. Comforting, Loki muttered. Really inspires loyalty. Thor intervened before tensions escalated. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. The god of stories manipulates narratives, yes? He reshapes stories across realities. So instead of trying to kill him, we should rewrite his story. Beat him at his own game. With what narrative? Steve asked. We're not storytellers. We're soldiers and heroes. We deal in action, not manipulation. Actually, Atreus spoke up from where he'd been listening quietly. Father and I have some experience with stories. In our realm, prophecy dictated outcomes. Gods tried to control narratives through predetermined destiny. But Father broke those prophecies, changed the story that was supposed to happen. Maybe we can do that here too. All eyes turned to the young man. He'd grown in 6 months, taller, more confident, his voice carrying authority despite his age. Kratos felt pride and concern in equal measure. Pride that Atreus had found his strength. Concern that the multiverse might break him the way it broke everyone eventually. Explain, Odin commanded gently. Atreus stood, moving to the holographic maps. The god of stories is building a cage for Kang, right? Using frozen realities as bars. But what if that's not his real story? What if he's actually trying to save the multiverse from something worse than Kang? What if we've been cast as villains in his narrative because we're disrupting what he sees as necessary salvation? You're suggesting the god of stories might be heroic? Natasha's skepticism was palpable. He's literally freezing realities and causing infinite deaths. From his perspective, those deaths prevent greater catastrophes, Atreus argued. It's the trolley problem on multiversal scale. Kill some to save many. He chose to pull the lever. We're trying to stop him. Neither side is purely good or evil. We're just working from different information and priorities. The observation hung in the air, uncomfortable because it was true. Everyone in that room had made morally complex choices. Steve had let people die to save more people. Thor had destroyed civilizations to prevent worse conflicts. Even Kratos had killed innocents during his rampage through Olympus, justifying it as necessary for his vengeance. So what do we do? Bruce asked. If both sides think they're right, how do we resolve it? We find common ground, Kratos said, surprising everyone, including himself. 6 months ago, he'd have advocated for simple violence. Now, influenced by Atreus' wisdom and grudging respect for these heroes, he sought alternative solutions. The god of stories wants to stop Kang. We want to stop multiversal collapse. Those goals aren't mutually exclusive. We don't have to kill each other to achieve them. You're suggesting negotiation, Loki said slowly. With a version of me who's already demonstrated willingness to commit multiversal genocide for his goals. That seems optimistic. I'm suggesting we give him a reason to reconsider, Kratos clarified. Show him there's another path. Prove that Kang can be stopped without freezing reality itself. And if he refuses, Kratos' expression hardened. Then we remove him as obstacle. But we try wisdom before violence. My son has taught me that much. The meeting continued, strategies forming, plans developing. They would attempt contact with the god of stories, using Loki as intermediary since he shared identity. They'd present alternative solutions to the Kang problem, and if negotiation failed, they'd escalate to containment, then elimination if necessary. It was as close to policy as Kratos had ever followed, and it felt uncomfortably like growth. Later, as the meeting dispersed, Steve approached Kratos in the hallway. "That was good work in there. Suggesting we try talking before fighting shows real leadership development." "Don't patronize me, soldier," Kratos replied without heat. "I'm not becoming soft. I'm becoming strategic. There's a difference." "Is there?" Steve smiled slightly. "Because from where I stand, they look pretty similar. Strategic thinking requires considering consequences, weighing options, choosing paths that minimize harm while achieving objectives. That's not softness, that's wisdom, which happens to be what good leaders possess. I'm not a leader. I'm a weapon who's learned to occasionally not fire." "That's exactly what I said about myself after the serum," Steve replied. "I was created to be a weapon. Super soldier program, specifically designed for warfare. But I learned that being a weapon doesn't prevent you from being a person.